Today we've got my wife's Jeep Wrangler and we're taking it out on its maiden off-road voyage. Plus I've got my son's Cherokee with me today. We're gonna go have a little bit of fun out on the trail and we're gonna talk about some off-road basics. Today's gonna be a beautiful day and we might even hit some snow. Welcome to Trail Recon. I'm Brad, and today I've got my amazing wife with me in her 2018 Jeep Wrangler JL, and I've got my son with me in his 1999 Jeep Cherokee XJ. And we have not had the JL off-road since we got it. This is the first time my wife will be taking it out on the dirt, and we haven't had the XJ off-road since we did all the repairs to it. So I thought today it would be kind of cool to talk about some off-road basics while we're having a little bit of fun on the trail, because I get questions about off-road basics all the time, so I know that this will be helpful for some of you out there. So today we are on the northwest side of Joshua Tree Park here near a little town called Pioneertown. It's an old kind of rustic town, and we're gonna run up the Burns Trail, which is cool because we're starting here in the desert and we're gonna end up near Big Bear. And it snowed up there yesterday, so we're hoping that we'll leave this desert and go find some snow. But today should be a lot of fun. Let's get started. So before we hit the trail, there's two things we want to do. One is a gear check, and so I packed a few things here in the back of my wife's two-door, and boy, there is not a lot of room in the back of this thing. But let me share with you what we've got back here. I have a Dead Man Off-Road Recovery Kit, and basically what that is, it's like a tow strap and a tree hugger all in one, but I've also got some shackles in there just in case we need it. We have a winch on front of the Jeep, which is a really essential piece of gear, but you want to make sure you have a tow strap in case you need to hug a tree and pull yourself out of somewhere. I've got a basic tool kit. I always carry tools with me when I'm on the trail. We've got a way to air up and air down the tires, and we'll talk about that here in a second. I've got a little portable charger in case, we have a dead battery we need to charge up. And I've got some water because you never want to hit the trail without having plenty of food and water. So we've got some water, we've got some snacks as well. We've also got a first aid kit and a fire extinguisher inside. And then we've got some navigation stuff, and we'll talk more about that when we hit the trail. Now, what we need to do right now is air down our tires. So let me show you why we air down our tires. Now, I get a lot of questions on the channel about tire pressure and what I air down to when I'm out on the trail. The reason that we air down the tires when we're off-road is really for two reasons. One, it's to expand the contact patch of the tire. So when you lower that tire pressure, not only does it get wider, but it gets longer. And so it makes it easier to roll over larger obstacles. It's going to give you more traction. And when you're on the sand, it's going to be easier to stay on top, or the snow, which we might find out a little bit later today. Additionally, airing down is going to make things a little more comfortable, especially when you're on those washboard roads. So what I usually do is when I'm on a stock tire like this, about 15 PSI is as low as I'm willing to go, because the last thing you want to do is pop the bead. Now on my Jeep Wrangler, I've got some bead locks, which allows me to go really, really low, down to 5 PSI if I need to. But for just a standard alloy tire like this, 15 PSI is perfect. It's going to make the ride nice and smooth, and we should have plenty of grip along the way. Burns Canyon is a very easy trail that runs approximately 19 miles along a forest road 2N02 and will take you about an hour and a half to 2 hours to complete. There are a few optional, moderate, and difficult trails that branch off from Burns Canyon, and once the snow melts, I think I might be coming back here to do a little more exploring. Well, as you guys can see today, I'm riding shotgun, and my wife is going to do most of the driving today, which is going to be a lot of fun for her, I know. So talking about some basics of just four-wheel drive. Now, this trail that we're on, Burns Canyon, is a very easy trail. In fact, there's not a whole lot of obstacles today. This is the perfect trail just to kind of go test the waters with the Jeeps. But if you want to put your Jeep in four-wheel drive, it's a very easy process. You just pull the lever down on that transfer case handle into four-wheel drive. Now there's a maximum speed that you should do that at. I don't know what I look in the owner's manual. It's probably 40 or 50 miles an hour, but really you want to be going at a slow speed just to pull it into four-wheel drive. And going in and out of four-wheel drive and two-wheel drive is something I kind of do often, because on a trail like this where it's pretty mild, oftentimes I'll be in two-wheel drive, and that will save a little bit of gas. Now, when you get to an obstacle that requires a little more effort to get over, that's when you want to go into 4-low. And what that requires is coming to a complete stop, or not almost a complete stop. Jeep says you can go 2 to 3 miles an hour, but you need to be in neutral. So your transmission needs to be in neutral, and then you can bring that transfer case lever down to 4-low, and that will give you a whole lot of low-end torque power to get over an obstacle you're trying to get over with. The key thing to know about that, though, is you're not going to go over 25 miles an hour because your RPMs are going to go way up. Another benefit of being in 4-low is if you're going downhill. Oftentimes what I'll do is, instead of riding the brakes, I'll put it in 4-low, first gear, and I'll let that engine keep me from just flying down a hill. It works great. So there you go. There's our first little tip about 4-wheel driving. We're going to talk a little more here as we head up the trail some more. It wasn't long into the trail before we reached the snow line, which made my wife Regina very happy, because for those of us here in Southern California, wheeling in the snow is a treat. We don't get many opportunities, but when we do, we take full advantage of it and get out there and play. Now what I want to talk about is the buttons that are down here on the Rubicon edition of the Jeep model. So we've got the sway bar disconnect button, which is a great thing to do off-road, is to disconnect that sway bar. That allows you to smooth out the ride and get a little more articulation. Now, once you start going over 17 miles an hour, that starts to reconnect itself, because you want to have that to maintain stability when you're at high speeds. So it's something you only want to do off-road at low speeds. Now, on my son's Jeep, it's a manual disconnection. He actually has to physically do that. But in this Jeep, it's nice. You just push the little button. Also down here, we've got the button for the rear and the front lockers, and that's very nice to have, because if you are going over an obstacle and you start getting tire spin, you hit that locker button and you get equal traction and power sent to both wheels, and it makes it much easier to go up and over obstacles. A very nice little thing to have. My son doesn't have that, so that's something where he's got to make sure he's got very careful tire placement and good throttle control. But on a trail like this, we're not really going to need it. Man, look at all that snow and the Joshua trees. There's not too many places in the world where you can go where there's Joshua trees and snow.
No, it's gorgeous.
It's beautiful out here. This is awesome. Okay, let's talk a little bit about how we planned this route. So I've been up here before, but I still spent some time on the computer 2 days ago just making sure that I had this whole trail mapped out, that I knew where we were going. Now, what I use for mapping is I use what's called the Gaia app. And I use that on my iPad mini, which I have here mounted on my wife's 67 Designs phone mount. It's a great setup. Gaia app is awesome. You can do all kinds of stuff with it, waypoints and load files and share files. But you can use Google Maps, which is a really nice thing to use because it's free, and you can download maps on Google for offline use. So if you don't have connectivity, you can still see where you're going. Now, it's important to make sure that you kind of stick to your route and let somebody know where you're going. Now, I'll be honest with you, every once in a while, I like to just go explore, but I still have an idea of where I'll be at. So planning out your route is very important. Burns Canyon is a well-known and popular trail, and we came across several other off-roaders along the way. You can travel the trail in either direction, and there are a few sections where things are a little tight for passing. Just remember to be courteous and try to find open areas to pull off onto when letting somebody pass by. Is this what you were hoping for?
Yeah.
One of the other things I always do when I'm preparing for a trip is I always check the weather, and I make sure I've got some good communication with me. Now, we knew coming in here that it had rained and snowed just yesterday, which is we're really excited for. It's almost the reason we're here, is because we know that there's about 2 to 3 inches.
Almost. It is the reason we're here.
It's the reason we're here. She wanted to go see snow, and so we're heading to this trail, but there should be about 2 to 3 inches towards the top. But checking the weather is important. You know, you want to make sure that if it's going to be cold temperatures, you bring extra gear, because you never know if there's going to be a breakdown and you're going to have to walk out somewhere. Also, with communication, having the ability to communicate with somebody, which it's always a good idea to bring somebody with you, but whether it's a CB radio or some walkie-talkies, in my case, I use a ham radio. I do have my ham license, something I got a couple years ago. It's important to have communication, not only for the group you're with, but just in case something happens and in an emergency, you need to try to get communication with somebody that's not anywhere near the trail and call for help. So checking the weather, good communication, always great basic stuff.
We were kicking up plenty of slushy snow and mud today, and my son and I have been trying to decide if we were going to add fender flares to Jamie, his Cherokee, or leave it naked. After today, we decided we'll be adding some flares. That was just a little too much mud thrown up on the side of the vehicle for our taste.
One of the other basics that's important is making sure you have enough fuel. And I know that sounds extremely simple, but look, I've been out on the trail and almost ran out of gas before, and it was an uneasy feeling. So we fueled up just a few miles before we got on the trail. We're not bringing extra fuel because we won't need it, but making sure that you have plenty of fuel, extra fuel for the route that you're going to be taking, it's really important. Now what I want to talk a little bit is just about some basic little driver's techniques that'll help you out. One important thing is when you are gripping the steering wheel, you don't want to have your thumbs up underneath the steering wheel. You want to keep them over the top, because what can happen is when you hit a rut or a rock, sometimes those wheels will swing and the steering wheel will swing and the cross member on the steering wheel will bite your thumbs. I know I've had it happen before. It doesn't feel very good. So just keep them over the top is just a good technique. You know, also when you're driving, you want to kind of keep an eye on the obstacles that are coming ahead and be proactive and not reactive to them. So you're making sure that you're lining the vehicle up properly. You know, you're getting a tire placement up high where you need it. Another important thing, and this is something people don't think about, is keeping the throttle control and the brake very stable. And sometimes when we're off-road, you can get a little jerky and the suspension will feel a little bit out of sync. So you can drive with 2 feet, and that sounds a little weird, but 1 foot on the gas and 1 foot on the brake. And by doing that, you can keep the vehicle nice and smooth over obstacles. Give it a try, hon, see what it feels like. It feels a little weird at first. Whoa, 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 easy.
Like that?
That's a little too much.
Okay.
Both feet, just kind of throttle it easy a little bit. There you go. It takes a lot of getting used to, but it can really help you out once you do. I think she's doing it on purpose now.
For me?
Another thing that's very basic, but it really is so important, is to pack it in and pack it out. Whatever you bring with you out on an off-road adventure, out on a trail, make sure that you take it out with you. The last thing you want to do is leave trash out on the trail. and have some kind of conservationist, you know, after us because we're messing up the trails. If you see trash out on the trail and you have room for it in your vehicle, grab it and take it out with you. Leave it better than you found it. And also stay on the trail. Travel responsibly. It's a mantra that I say all the time. You want to be out here and be responsible. Don't be going and, you know, going off trail and messing up a bunch of plants. Oh, we're getting a little rocky. Take your time through here. But please make sure that you travel the trails responsibly. We want to keep these trails open and fun for everybody to use for a long time to come.
Before you hit the road, you want to air your tires back up to the recommended tire pressure. Not only is it unsafe to drive with low tire pressure, but you will get uneven tread wear as well. Using an air compressor is a good option, but I like CO2 because it fills them up real quick.
It's crazy to think that just 2 hours ago we were down in the desert and now we're up here in this snow. It is beautiful. This trail is a blast. It's beautiful, it's easy. My wife and son have both had a great time coming up from the desert into this snow, just kind of getting the feel for their vehicles and understanding how they work. I hope the tips that we've shared with you today have been helpful. And look, if you're a longtime wheeler out there and you've got some other tips you'd like to share, throw them in the comments. I know everybody would find those very valuable. Look, if you're visiting Trail Recon for the first time, please hit that subscribe button. I'd love to have you as a member of the Trail Recon team. And as always, please remember to travel the trails responsibly. Thanks for watching.